if you were expecting to hear Joel Ahrens, he will be here late, and now you got to contend with me, and that could be good or could be bad. But I think for the record, just for the record, and for people that are watching online, I would like to have everybody introduce themselves. So Chad, would we start with you, please? And just go around and introduce everybody so that the public knows who's all here.
Sure. My name is Chad Skiles. I'm a citizen here in Canton, lifelong resident of Canton and Lincoln County.
I am Judge Rachel Rasmussen. I am a circuit court judge who is stationed here in Lincoln County full-time.
My name is Robin Howman. I'm the presiding judge for the Second Judicial Circuit, which is Minnehaha and Lincoln counties.
Jim Schmidt, Lincoln County Commissioner.
Betty Otten, public citizen from T.
Paul Paulson, a citizen, and I live in Sioux Falls.
Larry Nelson, I'm a citizen of Canton. I've lived here for the last 30 years.
Sandy, do you want to introduce yourself, please? Just go ahead. I'd like to have everybody introduce themselves. You can, there you go.
I'm Sandy Lundstrom. I'm the mayor of Canton. I'm just here as an observer.
Carl Thomas, excuse me, Carl Thomas, Circuit Administrator for Lincoln and Minnehaha counties for the court system.
Andrew Etram, architect with Architecture Incorporated.
John Rombo, I'm the building superintendent for Lincoln County.
I'm Chad Brown. I'm the chief deputy at the sheriff's office.
Alan Welsh. I operate a few of Darcy Johnson companies.
William Golem, chief civil deputy for Lincoln County.
Sherry Lund, Lincoln County Auditor.
Thank you all. If you looked at our agenda tonight, we have a rather short agenda, but it's jam-packed with a lot of action that requires. My opening remarks are, Alan, before you get up and make your presentation, and Bill's going to introduce you for that. We have been looking at this issue for courtroom space since last February when we had our first meeting. And, thank you, Betty. I think we start always with the pledge. Thank you for reminding me. So would everybody stand and repeat the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will. So we have several items on our agenda. We're going to hear a proposal from a citizen from Canton. But just some ideas to tell you where Lincoln County sits at this time and to show you why we need to take some action, is that we have had a proposal coming from Minnehaha County to be able to lease courtroom space up there for 1 year. I will tell you that from the conversations that I have had with my friends from Minnehaha County, this was not, they didn't just jump up and down with joy to want to do this for us, but they are good neighbors, and so we had that. And I will also tell you that that little sum of money will cost us $100,000. So we're talking real money here. We're talking time, we're talking money, we're talking necessity and need. And the other thing that I want to emphasize, when we get down to making selections, at our very first meeting, we talked about the future. I'm not talking about our future in a year from now, but I'm talking 10, 15, and 20 years from now. And when you look at the projections that Judge Howman presented to us, and we're going to be a county about 95,000 people, how many courtrooms will we need at that time? So we have probably one of the most critical decisions to be made for our future regarding public safety. So I hope we all remember that and we look long into the future, because this is a case that we need to present to the public and I think the public will understand what we're up against. So, Bill, do you want to introduce our guest? And we'll start this roadshow.
If it's all right with the chairman, I was just going to run through something real quick,
Okay.
and it will lead into it. So, just so that we're all on the same page, we just put together a very short outline, because there's really three things we're here for, which is how long are we planning for, what do we need in the future, and what's the location. So those are the three things we need to solve. So, nope. I don't know if I can. So the first question that we're all going to have to work off of is, what is our time frame? Then the location. Is it going to be Canton proper? Is it going to be something around Canton? We're talking annex, or we're talking other options? And when I throw these out there, these are just general categories for us to work off of, so we're all coming from someplace similar. So the courthouse, we're going to have to decide, do we remodel? Do we build an addition on this campus? Or are we building a standalone building somewhere? I think we've worked through this, and I think Architect Inc. can help us with all of this. These are all the things that we covered in space and need and time. I think the court's laid out what their expectations are and what they think they're going to need in the next 20 years. So finally, what we come down to is the hard part, which is the funding for it. And the options I've been able to come up with are broad categories. One is just bonding for it. The other is that there's federal money out there, and whether or not the COVID funds or the state or someplace else is going to be able to assist us with this. And then finally, we've discussed a possibility of leasing a space. And that's where Mr. Johnson came in, and he sent a representative down here to speak to us about this, that there might be a possibility of having someone build a building for us and for the county to lease it. So that would be something that we would have to be able to pay out of our current budget, and it couldn't go over that amount. So having said that, Mr. Welsh, would you like to address the committee a little bit about what's being proposed? Yep. Why don't you come on up here?
So a little bit about me. My name's Alan Welsh, retired as a district commander with the State Patrol about 5 years ago. And I went to work with Darcy Johnson, who I've known for about 25 years. I am not involved in politics or a sales pitch, just to be clear. I talked to Sheriff Swenson, and he mentioned, some of this was going on and the need. And when I was talking to Darcy Johnson, he has land here that, would be a good location, and he was willing to finance it if that was a route you wanted to take. But I'll be clear, I'm just here to present an option if it's something that works for the county. It's not something that we're pushing or that we do as a business, as far as we do a lot of leasing, but those are typically semis and trucks. We have done some buildings, but the reason we got into it was Darcy's a local person who grew up, was raised here, owned JFI Trucking with his brothers, and now he runs several companies, of which I oversee a couple of those. But what we looked at was, or what we were aware of, is the need. I mean, he has land that would probably work if you decided to move locations. I would assume if it's not in the city limits, it's adjoined with the city limits and could be annexed in without any problem. It's right on the other side of the house where he used to live. I don't know if anybody knows the big way. I think it's an event center now, I believe, up there just off of Highway 18. And he was also willing to finance the project, so I don't know if there was other people willing, to do that, or businesses, but he would finance the project. And then, he has a local interest in the community. I believe like 14 years ago when they were looking at Courthouse, he had kind of talked about offering up some land then, but I don't think that the county went that direction. The only thing I would add is if you're building, that the cost of building is going up at about 12% a year. And so if it's something that you guys look at that has to be done, that this is something that is going to be a need, whether it's courthouse, jail, in my mind, I have no idea what you guys are thinking, but in my mind, I kind of pictured like a campus. Maybe you start with a courthouse and you use the whole area, and you add a jail, you add anything you want to add in the future. There's several acres of land, so whatever you guys decided to commit to, like I said, there's nothing laid out. It's just options. So I'm just here to tell you that that is an option available. I'm not a sales guy or pressuring it in any way. I just wanted to make sure you knew that's available, and something we would be happy to assist the county with if it's beneficial for the county. I don't really have a whole lot of detail because until you guys decide what you're going to do, it would be hard to know the dollars and the numbers and present what a lease would look like and rent would look like, how many years before you own it, or however you guys decided to do that. So that's really all I have, was to present it as an option. There may be better options, there may not. If not, that's something I think I wasn't going to dig deep into the details unless that was something that you guys got serious about making that decision. So that's kind of what we were presenting, where the land is. We would build it to suit if that's the option, if you wanted to go that direction, and you could do it in phases, like a courthouse with holding cells, courthouse and a jail, or just build it up over time. So that's really all I have, unless anybody has any questions or anything.
Go ahead.
How many acres are available?
He's got 230 acres. I think, I don't remember who I was talking to, but they were estimating probably 30 acres would be needed.
Mm-hmm. Other questions for Alan? Larry?
I do. My name's Larry Nelson, and I've been following the rumor mill about the proposal, and I've heard all the way from the land would be given to the county to what you've described today as a lease, and you would build to suit us, and then we'd lease back. I just want to explore with you whether or not that land would be deeded to the county, or if there was any discussion about just giving us the land and letting us build ourselves.
I would have to check with Darcy. I do know that he's offered that land in the past as a donation, like several years ago, which is why I think he even thought to think about getting involved in this. I wouldn't want to speak for him on that. I could certainly check are you asking if he would donate the land and then not be involved in any aspect?
I'm just asking if that is something that could still be on the table, and I'm not trying to get you to commit. I understand.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's never come up without, honestly, I've not heard the conversation come up without us building to lease. So in my mind, I guess we haven't really talked about it, because if the building went up, it would probably just be incorporated in as part of the payment, the land and the building. If someone else were to build the building, I could ask if the option would be to donate the land, or if the option would be to just sell the land and let someone else do the building. There's like I said, I'm just here to offer some options. So he may be willing. I know at one time, when people talk, things change every time you talk. At one time I know he was talking about offering the land and trading it, and doing whatever, giving what you needed, and making the courthouse that exists into a museum or something. So, I don't know so I've heard some pretty far-fetched stuff too, but I don't think anything's off the table. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alan, I have a question. If the decision was to just have somebody build the courtrooms, is he locked on only paying for building out there, or would he consider building courtroom space on this campus?
No, he would do it anywhere. I think he was offering the land because he thought that might be an issue for the county. We do that we do that in other places. I mean, we've built buildings, you know, and just financed and leased. So this one obviously hit close to home for him, and he had the land. He just, I guess.
So the
threw it in
land's a
there.
variable, but he's not locked onto any one thing. If it was decision, he could still want to finance the courtrooms if,
Yeah.
wherever they're located.
He would be willing to
on our
finance
campus,
it,
yes.
regardless
Okay.
of the location.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from anybody? Yep, go ahead.
Is there a cap? Do you have a cap on what he's willing to finance at this point in time, just so we have an idea?
I've heard anywhere from 20 million to 45, and he was okay at 45. So I mean, I haven't heard anything over that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for Ellen? You're welcome to stick around if you want, or if you got better things to do.
I have my wife sitting out in the truck.
Oh, okay. Ellen, thank you for coming.
If she finds out I voluntarily stayed, it might not go that way.
And tell, if you would convey to Darcy a thank you for his offer, okay? Please do that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Bill.
I think this is where everybody could want to be, which is, now we need ideas. What does the committee want to do?
Are you talking, I mean, are we at that point now where we develop a list of possibility and options? Is that the point that you want us to be at?
I think we're at that, I'm going to just ask questions. Does the committee need more information about our needs or what needs to happen? Does anybody need that?
Personally, I think we could be a good fit right now to develop a preliminary list of options. Because I know that there's been informal talks with the group on different potential ways of solving this problem. And I just feel that developing that list, number one and foremost for me, is to keep that public and transparent with the public and with the citizens of Lincoln County. Because I think that's our number one top priority as this group, and that's to keep the public informed. So that's what my thought process is that this may be a good spot to and I'm not saying that we have, 15 minutes, go, everybody, give me an option, but begin that list of options.
How about from the rest of the committee? Paul, any ideas or thoughts? And Betty?
Well, my thought, what are we talking? Are we talking just courtrooms, or are we talking the whole courthouse?
Courtrooms.
Just courtrooms? You talk to people in Sioux Falls, and they'd like to see something built up by Sioux Falls. So I think, on my part, I think we've got to keep it right close here.
It stays in Canton.
It stays in town here. I mean, across the street, close the street going east and west, whatever. But it looks to me like that would be a better option. I think you start talking about building out, and the people up in Sioux Falls are going to want you to move up there.
Betty?
Yes. How long would it take to revamp this into a courtroom immediately? And then save that $100,000 from the lease in Minnehaha County? And can't we put a courtroom downstairs that doesn't take that recording equipment just for Judge Peckus for family matters and that kind of stuff? to just keep it simple and then use the monies that you wanted to pay Minnehaha to lease that and use that to hire somebody to get rid of all of this stuff that needs to go into electronic records and use that money so it frees up some of the space, a lot of the space right here in the courtroom or courthouse. How long would it take to revert this room into a courtroom?
So I think if I hear you right, I went back to our time frame because we really have a time frame of, this is a busy courthouse with a lot on its calendar right now, but judiciary is doing the best they can to manage. And the lease that's being talked about is 1 year. So if we go to remodel something here, it takes time to do that. I don't know. John, how long would it take to remodel something to a courtroom? 6 months? 3 months?
You know, I would normally say it would take probably 6 months, but with the way the market is right now and the way construction's going right now, I would easily say that it's probably at least a year. If we wanted to do some remodeling right now, I guess I could ask Andrew, but it's, you know, just from what I'm seeing, everything we're doing up from the highway shop out there, everything's been delayed, not just a couple weeks, but a month or two because of getting materials. So you talk about a major change here, materials are gonna be a problem, but.
I'll vouch for that. We're seeing that with our new ambulance station 2 blocks over right now.
I'll just add for the group that the option of leasing space in the Minnehaha County Courthouse was an idea that I had after we had our meeting on April 7th of 2021. And this group really identified that this was an emergent need based on the growth of the caseload in Lincoln County. Just from the UJS, the Unified Judicial Systems perspective, outfitting one courtroom with the electronics that the courtroom needs is about $25,000. Building out the courtroom that we did on the second floor here, it's my understanding costs somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000.
Correct.
So investing that amount of money in a temporary solution just didn't seem to make sense when, although Minnehaha County really doesn't have the space for it, the infrastructure's there, the recording system's there, the bodies are there. It seemed to make more sense to spend a lesser amount of money on a temporary fix that would truly indeed be a temporary fix and give this committee an opportunity to identify, do we want a 1-year fix? Do we want a 5-year fix? Do we want a 10-year fix? Or do we want a 20-year fix? And I'll tell you that when I came here on April 7th, I told you that Lincoln County was growing an average of 860 cases per month. And I can tell you that we've exceeded that already. And we had a total of 10,898 cases on June 9th, which puts us just shy of being exactly half the size of Pennington County in 2019 by the end of this month. Pennington County has 12 judges and 10 courtrooms to handle their caseload. And so it's not really a matter of, can we retrofit this space and survive for the next year or two? It's really, what is this committee looking at? Are we looking at a long-term fix? Are we looking at a short-term fix? If we're looking at a long-term fix, we have an option in Minnehaha County that's going to bridge the gap between now and whatever that long-term fix is, without the county having to spend an additional $400,000 or $500,000 to retrofit this space to be a temporary courtroom.
And one of the problems with this space, there's no judges' chambers. So that makes it kind of tough because a lot of things happen in the courtroom, but you got to have those judges' chambers as well because there's conferences that take place there. There are times where the judge needs to go back into chambers so the parties can converse, and we don't have anything with this room or the one downstairs. So we'd have to do something for judges' chambers. So that's why it would take some construction to do something.
If I may, just to add off of Judge Howman's comments, we are already using Minnehaha County on a very regular basis. Judge Peckus had a Lincoln County civil trial there last week and part of the week before.
Lasted 7 days.
Lasted 7 days. So basically, Minnehaha County is now aware that we've been using their space as well. So that also becomes an issue because if we do not have that extra space to use, we are in that much more of a crisis down here in Lincoln County. We would not have been able to do court the last 7 days that Judge Peckus had that civil trial. And that's where we run into problems with people getting into court on a regular schedule.
When we look at timeframes, and we're supposed to look long-term, if you were to put a shovel in the ground tomorrow, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 years. Based on what is out there, John, from what you see from building standpoint. So if we're looking, if you say you're going to look at 5 years, by the time the thing is built, you're going to be behind the schedule. You're going to have absolutely, you're not going to have really, you've barely caught up. So what have we accomplished? What have we accomplished if we do that? If we were to build 4 courtrooms and we don't get those online for the next 3 to 4 years, our population is still growing. Our caseload is exploding on us. So we have to look in a minimum of 10 to 15 years, I think, to figure out just what it is that we want and what's the best fit for that. And Chad, you mentioned options. Okay. I think that while, Paul, everybody wants, if I listen to the constituents up there, yeah, they wanted up Sioux Falls, they want a lot of things. But I think for the purpose for bringing this thing into focus, it is in Canton. If you can agree on the Canton campus, because that's your home base, like or not or dislike, this is the home base for this thing. So if we coalesce around the fact that this is going to be where we're going to build this, whether we build it out 1.5 miles or whatever that length is, or we build it to the east, or we build it to the west, or we take the old courthouse. And I have been surprised at the number of people that I've talked to in Canton who really don't have a whole lot of things about the old courthouse. I've been surprised at the number of people said, well, tear it down and build something nice. Build something that has is the same kind of architect or something. So when you want options, Chad, you go east, you go west, you go south, or you go a little further west. So let's talk about that. What do people feel about that?
Earlier, it was talked about that you wanted to keep the integrity of the old courthouse. But you've already wrecked that because you took the main entrance off. That, commissioners took that off how many years ago? The south entrance. So the building is already.
Well, that was part of the design of the new building for security purposes and all that stuff.
Well, that could be,
Yeah.
but I mean, still, the design of that building is gone because the entrance is gone. The way I see it.
Okay.
And I think whatever we do needs to be here. I'm just, when I talk about people in Sioux Falls, that's just what I hear and what they're talking about, so.
Commissioner Aaron's, welcome. We've heard the proposal from Alan Welch on what Darcy Johnson will do. And I think you're well aware of his options of having the land out there be donated or built out there, but he doesn't have any restrictions as to if we didn't take the land out by that he owns, that he would build on this campus of some kind, whatever we select. So I'd like to find out what the options, where do people, what's their, when we talk about going west, we have some issues. We have a bowling alley, you have land acquisition. If you go east, you have land acquisition. from the buildings that Canton owns. If you go south, Paul, you tear the old thing down and build something there. So let's hear somebody come up with. Larry?
The courthouse in Sioux Falls is 21,801 square feet. That's the footprint. That's a half an acre. The old Canton Courthouse and the front yard is an acre. If you go across the street to your parking lot, which is and then took the houses, Van Bakker's building and Sturtevant's, that's 1.69 acres. If you took just the courthouse parking that you have, Sturtevant's and Van Bakker's, that's 0.65 acres. And then the bowling alley, the old sheriff's, the hotel, the insurance business, where the insurance business used to be in Amber Wick, is 0.84 acres. And I'm just telling you that because all of those are footprints that you could sit in and use and plop down a design similar to what is up in Sioux Falls. I'll also tell you that if you look at the Sioux Falls campus, everything is there. You look at the campus out in Rapid City, everything is downtown and everything is there. I grew up in Sioux Falls, and where the courthouse is and where the jail is and the sheriff's or the police department and all that stuff is foremost, and bars and all that. And my point in telling you that is that the government had to go out and acquire that property, and in most instances was a willing seller and willing buyer. Out in Rapid City, they were able to negotiate all of their land acquisition for their expansion. They didn't have to condemn anybody. So I just say there's plenty of land to do what we need to do here. And I want to thank Judge Howman and Judge Rasmussen for the tour up there, but it opened my eyes as far as what we needed to do. And I heard you say, and if I say it wrong, I want you to correct me, but it was insinuated to me that what we needed to accommodate growth in Lincoln County was at least something that size or the equivalent. It would give us our courtrooms and the space that we would need it to grow. We were also told that it's not going to be that long as Sioux Falls continues to grow. Don't be surprised if there's another tower there where the old jail is. And so I think we need to think big. I said before that the 20-year plan is what we need to do, and if someone told me I was stupid, it should be 40, you wouldn't have a hard time convincing me of that. I think we have to be able to either go up or go out, and we have to plan for the future, and I just don't see how you get around anything shorter than a 20-year plan, Mr. Chairman.
Joel, comments?
Larry, I got a question from you. What I'm hearing is you're a big fan of the campus concept, right?
I am.
And I'm not saying this to be a smart aleck, I mean, legitimate question. Can we do the campus concept with the land we have surrounding this courthouse?
I think you can, because they did it in 2 other places, and they did it in Sioux Falls, and they did it in Rapid City, and they just expanded their campus by land acquisition. I'm not a planner, but I've only seen 2 things that make sense to me. One is you go up, or the other one is you go out. I did visit with the guy that kind of runs their campus out there, and he had been recruited to help them make some modifications to the courthouse and to the jail, and then he said he was done, and they said, why don't you stay with us? And I said, what did you do wrong? And he said, well, one thing we did wrong is they put the juvenile facility out next to their county shop area. And when I say campus, I'm cognizant that, is that close enough? Thank you, Sherry. I'm cognizant that your campus is going to be the highway department, and then it's going to be probably everybody else. And I think that's the model that was followed in Lincoln, or excuse me, Minnehaha County and out in Pennington County.
I have a follow-up question for you, Larry. When you're talking about the space, are you taking into account the potential for a jail at some point? I know we are a courthouse committee, but also as not just a judge here, but a Lincoln County resident, lifelong resident. If we're going to do this, a jail is something that we are going to need at some point. We can't continue to maintain holding prisoners in Minnehaha County. And so I would like to build some place, if we're going to build or renovate, where we have the option, if we don't do it now, to do it at some point in the future, to have jail and, even more importantly, maybe some treatment.
I think both of them can be done at both locations. I mean, I get it that a 30-acre plot is going to be a little easier to work with than doing it block by block or house by house property as it becomes available. I do like your concept of a treatment center. I've been thinking about jails, and I looked around at all the jail facilities. I'm told, I don't know that this is true, but I'm told that Watertown thinks they need to make some major updates. I believe there are 2 modern jail systems in the state, and they happen to be in Minnehaha County and Pennington County. I think everybody else their jails are on the struggle bus, to be frank with you. They need to be updated, and they need to be modernized. One of the things I'd love to see the governor do, or all of us get together and say, okay, there are some crying needs, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody's concepts or what they have now, but I think there's a crying need for courthouses in some of these counties that are just old and dilapidated, and something needs to be done. And I believe there's also a crying need for modernized jails and some jail consolidation, and I think there's some opportunities. I wish I knew something about how to treat people. But I'm told that I'm told that they have a system out in Pennington County that works pretty good. I'm told on people with methamphetamine, and I don't know anything about it, that you got to get them dried out, and you get them dried out, and that's a year and a half. If that year and a half, if you educated them on a job and gave them an opportunity to, get that off their record, if they could keep clean, maybe you'd get somewhere, but I don't know, Rachel. I hope I didn't go too long.
No.
I have a follow-up comment, Judge Rasmussen. Not only did we learn about our need for courtroom space, we also learned that this particular campus, this building here, is probably at maximum capacity as well. And when we look at the future, if you look 20 years out, do we have the space here in this administration building to accommodate the needs of a growing county such as we will become? So to follow up, Ms. Rasmussen, you talk about a lot of things about the future. We can't afford to spend up to $180,000 or whatever the number will finally end up to be as we continue to grow and incarceration needs. But if you were to put a building up and you were able to move out of this building, your sheriff's department, if you had to, your 911, your state's attorney office, you free up a lot of space, and maybe even that courtroom that we had spent all that money on. So you accomplish 2 things. One, you're providing for the needs of the courts and public safety, but you're also providing added space for growth of administration needs within this building. So you've got a 2-pronged situation here. You're accomplishing 2 things. And I think we have to be very aware of that, because right now this place is full. And where do you go for growth? And so, I look at this, and the other thing that I wanted to mention, I'm really not in favor of butchering up our building here for a short-term situation, because I don't think we've accomplished anything. I think we got to push our vision out there far enough to make that decision and accommodate both ends, here and in the courts.
Commissioner Schmidt, you're absolutely right about one thing. We cannot afford to look at the 1 and 5 year options. As far as I'm concerned, that's out, because it'll take us 18 months to get a building built, and then we're already halfway deep into 5 years, aren't we? About a year ago, I toured the law enforcement center with a group of Boy Scouts, and we were in the evidence room talking to one of the Minnehaha County deputies, and he told me they had very quickly outgrown that building faster than what they thought they were going to. No doubt because of the rapid growth. And so we need to look at the 20-year option here as well. We need to give it serious consideration. And I think the judges have been very clear about what they would like to see in terms of the square footage and the space they need to handle everything based on current case filings. So I think that's first and foremost, and I'm not hearing really any objection to that, am I? I mean, is anybody sitting in here, at least on this committee, telling us we shouldn't look at the 20-year option with seven courtrooms? I think that's what the recommendation is. I think there's consensus on that. I was speaking to one of the other commissioners the other day. He thought maybe we should look at even more. And I think there is some appetite for that. I think there is some appetite for that, you know, as opposed to building, you know, four courtrooms with jury suites and 3 that are kind of small. I think there's appetite to look at building all of them out full size right away. I think there's appetite for that. Now, I don't know whether that's the best solution. I mean, I'd want to hear from the judges again. Maybe they want some different combination. But I think there's appetite to want to, as you said, Larry, go big. And so that's the first thing I would say. Second thing I would say about location, from everything that what people have been saying to me is, I'm hearing 2 major concepts appearing to us. One is the campus concept that Larry was outlining, and that is we acquire land around this courthouse and we see if we can build that way. There's pros and cons to that, as there is to all ideas. And then the other major idea I'm hearing, of course, is creating the Justice Center complex, which, you know, I think Mr. Welsh gave a nod to that in his presentation tonight with the offer from Mr. Johnson. And that is creating a facility away from this building out on his land, although, you know, he wasn't suggesting it had to be his land, but creating a facility that is scalable, that could be built in the future. You hear some of the judges saying they want to look at a jail in the future. That would be a location that could maybe accommodate that. More so, perhaps, than what, and I don't know this for a fact, I'd like to have the engineers weigh in, perhaps more so than what this location could accommodate. I don't know that to be a fact. It's something we'd want to explore, but I think it's worth serious exploration.
Chair,
So,
may I ask a question?
Yes.
Going back to Judge Rasmussen's question about the jail, and then you talking about this, several of us have talked about why can't we look at a regional jail concept, because Clay County just killed theirs. We could look at Turner, Lincoln County, and put that as a regional base so that we had more tax base to work from as well. And that way, all of the other counties, we could look at being a regional hub and kind of distribute that tax burden. You know
Well,
what
I think
I'm
you're
saying?
right, Betty. And I had commissioners from the Turner County Commission come to me. They've approached me about that concept. And, you know, unfortunately, in the heat of the campaign over the last jail concept, we just weren't able to get to those conversations. So I could see as part of a legitimate, serious conversation about expansion in the future is we explore all of those things ahead of time before voting to do those things. And we do the same kind of committee when it comes, like we're doing here, with that concept in the future. we know we have blue sky with Minnehaha County. You know, we did our jail report. They've got about 10 years till they're at capacity. We have breathing room to figure things out, and we could launch a real serious effort to try to figure these things out.
I won't disagree with anything that's said, but I don't want to get sidetracked onto a jail because our most important need right now
Right.
is courtroom space. The other concept is, and I've had conversations with the commissioners down in Clay County, and Betty, we had talked about that kind of concept. Well, Vermillion is closer to Elk Point than it is up here, and I think the Union County Jail rents their space for around $60, and they've got extra space. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't explore that. That's not the issue. But if we did look at the future, and we did have a building that would accommodate a pod for a jail facility for 30 to 40 individuals, that can be put on later at a different time. I like the idea of treating mental illness. I very much do, because I think that is a solution to some of our incarceration problems. But for right now, I'm going to hold the line. I would like to have us coalesce around whether we want a campus concept, as you said, Commissioner, or do we want to look at something that will be apart from that, which will accommodate probably more easily, Larry, the jail concept and or maybe mental health, because it's a 30 acres as opposed to the acres that you have outlined.
Well, Commissioner Schmidt, I think we need to task our architects with doing the feasibility studies on those two major concepts. That's what I think needs to happen, is we've got to get our professionals, our engineers or our architect firm looking at those two concepts to report back to us on the feasibility. Just like they did a feasibility study with how much square footage we need, they now need to do a feasibility study on the two different sites. That would be what I would think.
I don't disagree. I'm more active right now. I would like to know, from the committee here, from our committee, what are you in favor of those two concepts? Is that something that fits within your purview of what we would need for the next 20 years? Because, I mean, we certainly need to have those kind of figures. We certainly need to see what they are, maybe some financial projections as well. But I'm just wondering, is that a consensus that we would have amongst our group? Those two concepts that Joel has mentioned.
And Mr. Chair, I have a question, which is, are you trying to come up with one solution now, or are you trying to come up with several solutions that can go to the?
I'd say you have an either or, maybe you have two, because ultimately this has to go in front of the commission and they have to vote on which one they like. But the recommendation should come from this committee saying we favor one over the other. We both like both concepts, but we have a preference for one over the other.
I'm just wondering how long such a feasibility study would take.
Yeah,
Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? You know,
How about days?
Yeah, I got nothing going on this weekend.
Send the kids with your mom or with your wife.
To me, it depends on how much detail the county is looking to receive out of the feasibility study. I mean, we've done the effort to know square footage. So if we're just talking about, tell me how big the building might be if it needs to house X, Y, and Z, I can get you an answer tomorrow. But if it's actually doing floor plans and renderings and looking at a specific site, that's gonna take more time.
How much time?
To explore both options. 6-8 weeks. I mean, there's whatever group we'd be reporting to as we would be generating these options to look at and consider. If it's this group, then how often are we meeting? I mean, that's why hard to give you a specific answer on.
I have a question, Larry. It's, when we go through options, how many courtrooms are we looking at? This, I'm thinking out loud, and you can answer, because I think you've done some good research on available land space. So are we talking, we talked about 7 courtrooms. I think, you know, if we're going about down the road, we're probably gonna need 10 courtrooms because of the number that Pennington County already has available. And if we're going to reach that size, I don't think we're gonna be, our needs are gonna be anything less. We don't have to finish 10 courtrooms. You can finish 7, you can finish 8. Sanford Hospital, you know, has continued to growth with always having available of going up. So if we look at that, just the courtrooms at 10, then do we look at a pod for jail, future? Do we look at another facility on that mental health? And can we accommodate that here around this campus?
Okay, the easiest thing is going to be the 30 acres.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just all brand new construction, that's just real simple.
Yeah.
I at one point in time said to Betty Otten, we gotta think about the jail, and she said to me, we need to think about a regional jail, and I've not gotten off that since she told me that, and I think you're absolutely correct. And I don't know if to do a regional jail, we're gonna have to, we can do it here, or if we're gonna have to do it someplace out in the country that's convenient for the partners in that regional jail. I do know you can do jail agreements. I do think end of the day, because they're smaller counties, they would prefer to come up and you know, be at that 30-acre location. I'm not gonna, I didn't take copious notes when the judge was giving her presentation. I think she said 10 for the first go-around, but I'm gonna defer to Judge Howman about what we need for the next 20 and then for the next 40.
Well, I think my notes show from Andrew's presentation, which I think was the 10-year plan, was 5, perhaps 6 courtrooms.
While you're looking, Andrew, if we look at our population of 65,000 currently, and we shoot out 10 years, we were looking at 85 to 90,000. If we look out 20 years, we'll be well over 100,000 people. 100,000. So I'm thinking, okay, we're down the road. 10 courtrooms is probably a minimum. And we may need much more. I don't think our crimes are going to go down or anything. So when you look at this, for growth purposes, when we talked about up or out, Larry, if we're, and I'm not saying we're not in favor of the campus here, but you better have the ability to go up because you can't go out.
That's right.
Yeah. Where the other option is you have a bigger footprint that you can work with.
And Jim, I sit and I think about the new hospital that they built out in the middle of nowhere for McKinnon, and they went up and not out, and I haven't quite figured that out yet, but you and I can solve that someday.
Well, and they built a parking ramp there.
Yes.
Yeah.
They built, what is it, 3-story parking ramp?
6, okay.
That issue is something that needs to be considered as well.
Parking is a huge thing.
And parking in this neighborhood around this courthouse facility. One of the pros of going towards a justice center complex, state's attorney, courts, potential future jail, sheriff's department, emergency communications, et cetera, is we have the land to create the parking out there without having to build expensive parking ramps. I don't think anybody in Canton wants a parking ramp next to Jack Fox Park here. But I'll let Mayor Lundstrom weigh in on that if she wants to. So I think that is one of the pros that has to be considered as well. And if we're talking about 10 courtrooms, we're also talking about, I'm sure there's some formula to determine how many parking spots you need, but I go to court every day up in Sioux Falls, and there's a lot of parking spots up there taken out, a lot. And there's a lot of traffic up there too.
Aaron's, just a question when you're talking about like a future jail pod, has there been any discussions about how the people, you know, on this committee think that this should be paid for, and whether there would be some, I don't know, if we're giving Minnehaha County right now, well, it's gonna be right at about $2 million a year. If we were to accept Mr. Johnson's offer to use that money that we're now paying Minnehaha County to make our payments to Mr. Johnson and shift those costs to keep that money here in the county? Has there been any discussions about how to pay for this, whether it's an opt-out, a bond, or do the jail pod and shift that money back into Canton?
There's been little discussion, I think, on the financing mechanisms. I think we've only really had significant discussions about the jail tonight in the context of location and talking about how we would scale up to that in the future. So I think that's where we're at right now. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out, though, that if you accept Mr. Johnson's offer and you have to make annual lease payments, you may not have to take out general obligation bonds. That could come out of general fund. And maybe we could do other financing that maybe is a little more palatable with the public in other areas, like transportation, in order to free up funds out of other general fund areas to make a annual lease payment. I'm just thinking out loud, of course. On the other hand, if you go towards new construction, like with the campus concept, we may have to employ general obligation bonds, which, didn't go so well in Clay County 2 weeks ago. So all things to consider. I think tonight I'm hearing consensus, at least from this committee. I don't know about the public. There definitely is an appetite to want to improve our courtroom space, for sure. It's just, how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? And how do we balance our space needs with the financing mechanisms? So definitely a couple things that are trending in favor of the Justice Center complex, I would think. I'm not pushing for either one at this point, but we've got to have these hard conversations right now.
Commissioner Landy, and I think, just to follow up on your point, and this is just my own thing. So if we were to look at using Mr. Johnson's concept, and he would build a facility, whatever we decide we wanted, okay? So we come up with a plan that says we need 10 courtrooms with the ability to expand at some point in time in our future, possibly doubling that size. In addition to that, we would also like to have you build a pod so that we could have an incarceration that would be located out there, which could accommodate a regional one because you're not necessarily on the highway, but you're about 10 miles from that highway. You're on a U.S. road. But if we were to have that addition built, we could take the $2 million plus, and that's at present level. Our court, if I listen to Judge Howman tonight and know how much our court have increased, that incarceration is going to increase as well. So I don't know, it could be $2.5 million by the time we're done. But if we were to take that money and apply that to the lease, we may be able to come out of this thing and, as Commissioner Ahrens has said, finance that with a small addition from our general fund, and we're not raising taxes, we're not doing anything other than utilizing monies that we have, are paying for something, and we're getting something back of value. Now, I don't know, I don't know. Paul, you're a businessman, does it make sense to try to do something like that?
Listened to you tonight and we've had conversations, but I've also heard that in the future, it's gonna be too risky for your treasurer's office and your two.
You should probably come to the microphone so that the public can hear that.
Yeah.
You'd be too close to keep your other departments safe in courtroom days, that you're gonna be forced to have separate rooms, campuses, or whatever. So I guess my opinion is your justice thing out there. Here, we've had that conversation that we'd have plenty of room, but you also hear that it fills up way faster than you want. I think they're here and don't even forget to maybe look at the options to get that bought in timely manner, because parking is a serious problem, especially when you have big things going on.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Paul.
I'll just add one more wrench into this that hasn't been discussed, maybe has been put on the back burner, forgotten, whatever word you want to use. And that is that Lincoln County does currently own already, what are we, about 48 acres south of the highway department? There's still a chunk of land. The number 48 sticks in my mind. Does that sound?
I think it's closer to 30.
Okay, but even 30 acres. I mean, let's not forget, I mean, if we're going and we're again leaning towards a justice center concept or something, that I don't know why that wouldn't or couldn't be a potential option as well. And that is land that Lincoln County already owns.
There would be utilities that you would have to take out there. They would have to pave the road, and then there would be maintenance. If we did end up doing a joint center, then are they gonna wanna drive down, a mile, about half a mile down to get to it? Where their access on 18 is all, there's two highways on both sides of it.
That, and then there's also, not to get in the weeds on the legalities of it, but it needs to be in the county seat if we do the Darcy Johnson option.
That is currently not in the city limits either.
Right, so the city would really have to be willing to annex out that far. I don't know if they are or aren't, and then there aren't utilities.
We would simply have to ask that question of the city of Canton, which is very easily done,
The current location, I believe there's already utilities there, and I think there's a good likelihood that the city would annex in the spot that we're looking at.
And I think those are, good questions that Commissioner Landine is raising. That's what the architects can tell us. They can do this legwork for us to find out specifically what utilities are out there, what's out there for water, sewer, broadband, all that. Those are questions we need to know before we start getting too far of wanting to make some vote to just go do it tomorrow. And that's why I think we need to get those questions answered, because I think the public's gonna wanna know that stuff too.
I think the city can probably answer them. I don't see any benefit to taking 6 to 8 weeks to do these feasibility studies that you're proposing or spend that money. 2 months ago, we declared, everybody on this board agreed that there was an emergency. So going another 2 months isn't gonna, we know what we need to do and the commissioners are gonna have to make a decision. So at some point, we just gotta pick a path and take it. The city is here and has indicated that they will annex the land that they're gonna.
There's water and sewer already out there.
Correct.
You're talking the Johnson land, right, Sandy?
Yes, the Johnson land.
They're actually bringing new water in as we
Is that coming then, east on 18 into town, or where's that coming into town then when it gets up to 11th? But I mean, is it coming, would it literally be going right by that?
It's already hooked up to the water and sewer. We're already all the way down to the corner of Highway 11.
Oh, okay, okay.
And what I've heard too, as far as the county shed, you guys maybe know more about it than that, but I've also heard that the township maintenance might shift to the county. Therefore, all them graders and stuff gotta come here, so if you go put something on them 30 acres and you need it in the future, then you're back to where you were.
You're right about the county, or township wants to shift the maintenance on that road because they claim we use it all the time, so we should pay for it. Back to your regional, one more comment, Larry and Betty, on a regional concept. You have two highways that intersect there. You have the one coming from the south and you have one coming from the west. So you have plenty of accessibility, you know, hard surface road. It's not hard to get there. So that can remain a very viable situation. You could certainly talk with, you know, if you wanted to include in Mr. Johnson's proposal, you can put a minimum on there, but you could also start the research to see whether there was any real flavor from Turner County and Clay County that would want to participate in that. Because those are the two counties, because Union has one, Yankton has one, and we don't. But I don't think we're going to reach the Bonhomme because I think they take care of those. And so those are the two counties that are most likely would wish to participate or think about it anyway.
It has been suggested to me that Union County is having the same courthouse space issue that we're having here. And just remind everybody that they're located next to Sioux City and the Dunes and South
Yep.
Sioux City, et cetera. And just remind everybody here that that's gonna be the place that's gonna sell more marijuana than any other place in the state when it becomes legal.
And can I just add, Union County had 2,400 cases the last year we have recorded. Lincoln County already has over 10,000 with essentially 1 month left to go in the year. So when we talk about Union County, let's just remember that it's maybe a quarter of the size of Lincoln County. And I'd asked Andrew about 10 or 15 minutes ago what his original projections were, and he said that that was for 6 courtrooms, and that projection was for our 10-year need. So on behalf of the unified judicial system, I just really would encourage this committee to try to avoid the dilemma that we're now encountering in Minnehaha County. When we built the beautiful courthouse that we do have, it was originally 4 stories, and that was built in 1996. We added on to the courthouse in 2008, I believe, an additional 2 stories. We are out of space, and that is 20-year projections. My only encouragement would be, we've projected 6 courtrooms for 10 years from now. I don't necessarily believe that that means in 20 years that we need 12 courtrooms, but I think it certainly behooves this committee and the citizens of Lincoln County that this committee is far forward thinking, not even to just 20 years, but perhaps 40 years, because 20 years from now, I'm not certain a committee wants to be revisiting these issues and deciding, okay, well, now we've outgrown this space that we built 20 years ago. Where are we going to go now? Because we can't add on or have anything additional on this campus.
Andrew, I have a question. If tonight I told you to start building in location X, I just waved my magic wand and said, start tomorrow, would we be able to do anything this construction season?
Start construction tomorrow or start design?
Well, you got to go through the whole process, right? So if I said go, How long till we can actually put spades in the ground? Right. So we have 6 to 8 weeks to figure this out then, right?
Sure. The reason I hesitate is if you add 6 or 8, take 6 or 8 weeks, that puts you in August sometime.
Right.
Then a decision has to be made still relatively quickly to act on whatever that study would show, because to go from a study, a feasibility study that's complete in August and approved in September to construction documents isn't a short task.
Okay. What are we looking at for potential timelines then,
For construction documents,
for everything? How would the process work?
so in this, all of the things that have been discussed by this committee and the commission and everything, I do think a study to put more information on paper to make an informed decision before you proceed would make sense. And so if that did take 6 to 8 weeks, the outcome of that study was approved relatively quickly and the commission acted on it and do a solicitation to hire an architectural firm and cut them loose on design. A project of this size would take 4 to 6 months to do complete design, to take it from feasibility study through documents ready to be constructed. So starting today and doing 2-month study and 4 to 6 months of design work after that, 6 to 8 months.
Where does that put us then? In terms of, puts us,
February of next year.
and then puts
Bid.
us into the construction season would start when?
Yeah, so when we are working with clients and targeting or laying out a project schedule to start in the spring construction season, we're trying to bid that sometime January, February, March is ideal.
Would we be able to hit that then?
Yeah, I mean, 8 months from today is mid-February, right?
Right,
Or mid-January.
mid-January.
So, yes.
How much are construction costs increasing each month right now?
12%.
Normally we see inflation on construction 3 to 5%. Steve Jastrom and I just updated an estimate the other day for a project. We'd done the last iteration of the estimate last November, October, November, and we were 15% higher than that number. So I don't think that's going to continue, but it's definitely, this year's been a major spike. I mean, 10% beyond what we would normally expect.
We were always told, Mike Bender was talking today, and it's about 12%, what the standard figure is on cost increase. It's going up. When you're talking about timelines, and if I'm just looking, if we take the 6, I don't want to hear 8 weeks, I want to hear 6 weeks. Okay, if we have the material coming in, we make a decision, then you have to go out, and you said, now we're going to have a design, so we're going to have to select an architect, so we have to put an RFP out for architects, and that takes time for that to be selected, and then you have to go through all of the bid process. And assuming we are right now in our area, let's be realistic about the number of buildings that are going on right now. I mean, Sioux Falls is alive with growth. So where are these contractors going to come from? Are they available to deliver? Are they available to get the products that are necessary? So I think when we start talking about, can we start next February? That to me is a wish list. I don't think that we will be able to do that. I just don't. So therefore, I'm looking and saying, what's the best process? And would the best process be to have someone else that don't have to go through any of that stuff. We can do what we get our feasibility study, and we say to somebody, okay, it's your baby, you go build, you do that. They don't have to go through all the steps that counties have to go through to quantify and to RFP for all of these different things.
If we do the Darcy Johnson route, if that's what the commission decides, that's all privatized. Darcy Johnson can, maybe he's got an architect that he wants to use, that has experience doing these types of things. I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't think, we don't need to do an RFP for architects. Anyway, we can hire somebody for professional services. But Darcy Johnson can do that as well. So that would be, I guess, I think a benefit and a time saver to let them do that. Obviously, with talking with the commission and making sure it was somebody that was qualified to do that type of a project.
Yeah, I've talked to Mr. Welsh. Mr. Johnson has done this with 2 other buildings, one in Ohio and one in Colorado. One of the buildings was build to suit, the one out in Colorado, and the other one was a purchase of an existing structure. And they've seemed to indicate that the build to suit, given the complexity, it was the one out in Colorado was for a trailer truck facility. And they seem to indicate here that they would take direction from us given the complexity of the project. So they don't, just to answer your question, Commissioner Landine, they don't have any of these people on staff ready to go. We've got to force feed it to them, and then through some kind of contractual process, they'll take what we give them and turn it back around.
Can I make a quick point? There was mention of the county's property that the county owns out by the shop. There are a ton of examples of public-private partnerships where a developer would come in, like Mr. Johnson or another entity, and the county could lease the ground for X number of years, and they build the building and the county leases the space. So they're financing it, doing all that. There are university campuses that do that don't want to bond and use up their bonding capacity for housing. So they will lease state property, public property to a developer. The developer comes in, builds a building, operates it. The financial terms matter there. So there are, to do it through a developer and lease the project, whether it's Mr. Johnson or some other option, that's not a atypical scenario. It happens.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to do the RFP process because it's a private developer taking all of this on. He just wants to know from us, we got to do all the legwork. We got to tell him it's build to suit. We have to tell him what it's going to look like. But the county commission will not be entering into contracts with architects. It's simply going to be entering into a contract with the developer. So he gets to do all that privately, and we don't have to go through any of those steps that a municipal entity would have to go through in order to expend those funds.
Correct. I'm just saying that there could be ways to do that outside of Mr. Johnson with the counties, the acres that Chad mentioned earlier.
Well, I don't know that, Chad, that land probably is not the most conducive thing if you really got on it. It has some low ground issues. But the other part that we haven't talked about is if we don't use Mr. Johnson and we have to go to the public, that involves a vote. It involves time. It involves a lot of issues that extend before you can ever begin building on anything. And I'm not so sure that the appetite of the voters out there are right now to look at added taxes. Unfortunately, we live in a high-tax county. It's not because of the county, it's because we got school districts that, you know, are continually growing and building all the time. So the option of not or having someone build this for us and for us to lease this thing has the least impact on the taxpayers of this county. Pure and simple. Now, does that mean that I'm in favor of that? Well, I'm leaning pretty hard on that one right now, simply because it meets a lot of needs. It meets needs for, if we want to have an expanded campus, it meets the needs of perhaps having a jail pod there. It meets the needs of a timeline that is there. It meets the needs that we're not impacting taxpayers. And it absolves the county of having to go through all the things which Commissioner Aaron's is talking about. I mean, that's a private outfit. He builds, we pay, we lease, we buy over a period of time. I don't know. I just think when I start putting pluses and minuses on this thing, I got a whole lot more pluses than I do minuses.
To follow up with that, in how many situations do you see, Andrew, where the lease from the developer is a lease to own? Is that an option sometimes? It would be nice if it was an option, I think, for the taxpayers to actually gain an asset out of this.
It is an option, but we have to have 4 or 5 votes to get that done. Most likely. So.
Commissioners, can we get that done?
Well,
I think we need to see some numbers, Judge. We're gonna need to see what it's gonna cost. You know, are we voting on a $100 million facility or a $20 million facility?
Well, and I'm not sure on the vote thing. It might only be 3 depending on how it's structured.
To enter into a lease, you mean?
Yeah, because if we're not bonding, then there's probably nothing preventing it.
The one project that I had experience with, and it didn't go through anyways, but I was aware of the logistics and the makings of the deal that were discussed. There's several ways to structure it. It just takes sitting down and negotiating that. The way this one was structured is after 40 years or something, it was just turned over. So the developer worked into their pro forma. They were making enough to capture not only their return on their investment, but their original capital over that 40 years. Now that duration is stretched out because they've got to make that up. But the structure was going to be just, here's the keys. So there's somebody that's better at financing and math than I am could answer those, but I know there's a number of ways to do those.
They
Andrew,
could just deed it over. They could deed it over at
They've
the
got to
end.
capture their
Right.
initial capital investment and their return to their investors, or however they want to do that. But if that lease term was long enough, they could theoretically just
But
hand it over.
Andrew, did I hear Mr. Welch say that Mr. Johnson would donate the land to Lincoln County?
Yes.
I think he said he would check for sure.
Right.
I think he's made a kind of a commitment of donating the land, if you build it there, yeah.
See, and after tonight's discussion, I was all for the campus part of it, but after listening to everything tonight, I'm really leaning towards that Justice Center complex so that we have the ability to build when we need to build, especially parking is such an issue. And then if we do a regional jail or even a jail of our own later down the line, that could all be in that justice complex, and I like that idea.
Just want to make sure you have enough land to begin. 30 acres might sound like a lot, but 30 years from now, it might not be enough.
So are there some decisions we can make today? Let's start off with simple ones. Are we gonna do something and solve our courtroom problem? Are we gonna build a courtroom of some sort? I mean, like,
We can make a recommendation to the commission.
When?
Is there a consensus in this committee?
I think our consensus should be that that's a no-brainer, we ought to do that.
The Darcy, you mean the one out, the camp,
Just the concept that we're gonna build a courthouse is A.
Yeah.
So we're done with that.
Yep.
Then I think our next issue we have to do, is it gonna be a 20 or a 40-year plan? And I think that's gonna be driven by, you know, money might scare some people away, but it's gotta be a minimum of 20, and I'm still going for 40. If we can get there, because I don't wanna do it by pieces, because doing it by pieces costs us money. And I think that the other thing I'd like to see us to sit and say is, okay, we've talked about jail, let's start reaching out and seeing if there's some possibilities for doing a regional jail. I don't wanna abandon your concept, because I think it's a good concept. I think we need to start reaching out for that mental health and that drug treatment component.
Larry, I'd like action. I think we should put something in front of the commission. Now,
I'd like to move
this is the other part, Larry. This is real.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking $20 million, I don't know what that impacts. That could be, I don't know, 12, 15 bucks on 1,000, maybe. I don't know. It could raise your taxes by, you what?
Well, and Commissioner Schmidt, you don't have to do general obligation bonds if you do the lease.
That's what I'm getting at. I'm getting at that if you look at that size, Larry, and you have to take that to the public and they have to vote on it, the likelihood that they're gonna vote on that in the affirmative is not there. I mean, you got every indication, whether you want Walworth County, whether you want Cottington County, whether you want Clay County, and there's one other one that's up, Bennett County is another one. All of those have had their vote, they've turned them down, flat. And I mean, that has been 75, 80%. So our only recourse we have then is what's in front of us from what Darcy Johnson has said. I'll spend up to $20, $30 million on this thing. Now, the only question that I have is, what impact does that have for a lease? Okay, well, we've had Commissioner Landine talk about the fact that if we did put a pod or a jail there, we would be able to take the $2 million that we're sending right now to pay for Minnehaha's County Jail, keep the money here, add that to the lease with a small amount, and maybe we have this thing set and we're able to afford this whole thing, and we have everything we want. Am I missing something here?
It's the same amount of money, Commissioner. It still comes out of the taxpayer's pocket. And I don't think that you save money by one proposal versus the other. One proposal may in fact cost you more, which may be one of the questions that the voters are going to be asking. I think you have two options. I think the first one is that you voted and you had 4 and it's not referred. And then the second option I think you have is that you lease it. And then the third option is that you do what those other folks mistakenly did, is they put it to an election. I mean, my God.
But you can't.
Yeah.
Larry,
Hello, it's an
Larry,
election.
Larry, we have had an example. You know, you and I, in case we wondered, we've sparred for many years. But on the other hand, we've had examples where energized citizens are put on a ballot that we will have a vote here in July on a rezone that we did, in all honesty, that was for economic development. When you say it comes out of the taxpayer's pocket, you're correct. But I'm not taking extra money out of the taxpayer's pocket to pay for this. I'm using it within our current budget situation that we could pay for. And we're not adding anything to the taxpayer to have to pay for that. We're going to have to be more fiscally responsible as a commission to try and meet that lease payment.
Jim, I'm not gonna argue with you, because that easy, we'd go get a loan. But let's just move. I think we need to do some things, and I think we need to, A, where do we want it? B, do we want to pursue these two concepts? yeah, we're gonna build something, do we wanna have the regional as a component? All these things we talked about, we need to say yes, 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 and move on. Or we need to say no.
I'd like to just summarize the last 90 minutes from my perspective. And it's basically this. Everything we've discussed tonight are things that I've talked with different people on the committee about as individual concepts. What the last 90 minutes has done for me has put it all together. And what came out of the last hour and a half is the fact that there's a really clear-cut direction that I see Lincoln County going in the concept of this justice center with the potential of building and adding on, which 90 minutes ago I would have said, nope, I'm not buying into that. I had convinced myself the concept that I liked was adding to the main campus here by going west. That's where I was at 90 minutes ago. I am seriously not there anymore. I like this idea of a justice center. I mean, that the Johnson land appears to be a good fit. It appears to meet the needs. And boy, you're talking about expansion. We don't have to worry about where whose property do we have to buy next? Do we have to tear down a house now? Do we have to lose another business in town? Because we've got 30, or if we go more, acres out there, we can go this way. That's my summary.
And we're just talking about parking. Larry, you and I mentioned parking, and you had talked to me about a solution that you had in mind for parking.
I think if you approach the Lutheran church here, and said we lay down a mat of new asphalt for you, I'd be shocked if they wouldn't let you park cars there during the day. In fact, the same thing with Canton.
Larry,
Thanks.
you're in trouble with the auditor.
Yeah. So, could we do something?
Well, I'm also,
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
We, all the talk is about how fast the county's growing. And so nobody's told me how much is the tax money increase coming into the county? Is there any increase, or is that being spent somewhere else? Or what's happening to all this growth that's going on?
I only heard part of the question, what was it?
All the growth that's going on in the county, all the building and all this stuff, what's happening to the tax money will be coming in from that? Is it amount to anything or not, or?
Well, right now, the current levy for the county is 2% of every 100,000. So it's not a lot of money, but a lot of the money that we do get goes into, for instance, we're on track right now to spend $1.98 million for housing prisoners in Minnehaha. That's a big part of our budget. Then we have to have the sheriffs that are taking them back and forth.
Paul, in answer to your question, it's this. It's a simple one. Lincoln County probably has the fourth lowest mill levy against property taxes of anything. If we had what Minnehaha County has, as she said, we have 2%, Minnehaha County has, I don't know, 3.8. Pennington County is over 4. We are one of the fourth lowest in the state. So can we take full advantage of all this growth? I think 2 years ago, we could have had, if we'd had the same ratio that Minnehaha County had, we would have had maybe $3 million. Instead, I think we had maybe we had several hundred thousand. So with all the growth, we don't get to appreciate that because our levy is as low as it is. And we can't change that. It was frozen by Governor Janklow, and that's where it was. And we get an option of going 3% or the CPI, which is ever less. That's it. That's all we can, that's all that we can go. So if the CPI is 1%, that's what we get. If the CPI is 0, we get 0. So from the county perspective, while all this growth is going on, can we benefit enough? Well, the question is, does it cost us more to have all this growth going on than the revenue that we got coming in? And that is, you know, sometimes you ask that question. Is it? Well, it's not going to stop, but anyway, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Paul, our growth last year was right around 400,000.
Pardon?
Our growth was right around 400,000.
The dollars coming into the county?
Yes,
Okay.
You mean new money?
yes.
New money. So in answer to your question, Larry, what are you saying? You want to embrace one over the other and move forward, or what?
I don't care how we do it or which one that we do. I wanna have someone design something that builds it, and it builds it, you know, within the city limits of Canton, South Dakota. I'm real comfortable with the campus, or the enforcement center, that's fine. But I'd like you guys, thank you. I'd like you guys not to stop the momentum we've had on the conversation. And here's what I've heard tonight. Yes, we need to do something about a courthouse, and it's gonna be a 20-year or 40-year plan. Give somebody some directions on what they're gonna do. Yes, we need to look at the concept of doing a regional jail. I mean, let's start working on that and putting out feelers to other counties where we can do something about that. Yes, there's an interest in doing something on the mental health and on the drug component. Let's start putting that together and quit talking about it, because I want us to do something. I'm tired of talking.
In that case, then, Larry, we need architects to start putting together plans to give us numbers, so we can put a lease agreement together. And we need to start entering into exploratory phase with Mr. Johnson. That's what I'm hearing, right?
What I heard is that we have two of the committee that completely changed their mind from the campus concept to go to the other idea. I'd like to put it to a vote saying, I'd like to move with one and just say, are we going to take Mr. Johnson's proposal or not?
Can I refine your motion, and whether we have his proposal or not, let's just go with the concept of having the regional, because I don't want to make it contingent upon getting that particular land. Does that make sense?
You mean the Justice Center?
The Justice Center.
Yeah, the justice, that's the route. We would,
Right,
that would be our direction.
I want a Justice Center. I'd prefer to have it out there, but I don't want to pull that off the table if for some reason that doesn't become available. So design a Justice Center on a 30-acre parcel, and we'll work on getting the land.
Well, there's only one proposal for 30 acres that is going to be given to us, so I'm comfortable with moving ahead with the Johnson proposal and engaging him and who has attorneys or whoever else we have to do. First off, we got to take this to the commission. The commission has to vote on this.
Right.
And ideally, we'd like to get 5 votes in support of this thing so we can move forward on a united front. And then we can engage our state's attorney and their attorneys to work out some of the details. In the meantime, we have to figure out how many courtrooms we're going to build on this thing. We're going to build 15. We're going to build 20. We're going to put an option on for a jail situation.
Well, I think those are the things we got to figure out first. Let's not put the cart in front of the horse like we did with the jail last year. Let's figure those things out now. Let's figure those things out so that we've got clear direction and guidance from this committee to the commission, and so the voters know exactly. We need to know in our mind first what we want, instead of just saying, well, let's run out and vote on it, and then we'll talk about the details later. Let's do it the other way around.
Okay, how much more time do we need to figure out how many courtrooms that we need? If we said we had projections on this thing, and if we said 10 was short, well, I'm looking at, if we look 20 years down the road, Judge Howman, how many courtrooms does Pennington County have? And they're 100,000. What do they got?
They have 10 courtrooms and 12 judges.
That's what they currently have? Yes.
12 judges, 10 courtrooms.
If it helps, we'll put this on the agenda for the 29th, or 22nd, and hope to have a recommendation, from this committee at that time, and whoever wants to be the spokesperson can come in and do it. I don't think we need to make any hard decisions tonight, but we'll put it on the agenda, and so you guys can bring us a recommendation so we can get off the dime on this.
We got to figure out the number of courtrooms. That's first and foremost. We got to figure out Sheriff's Department, Emergency Communications, and State's Attorney. So we got to figure out who the ancillary services are going to be out there, right? Right. I guess when I say emergency, I mean, yeah, dispatch. We're going to figure that out, and then we got to figure out how many acres we want, or maybe that just kind of comes along when we tell them, right? I'm hearing Paul say at least 30 acres. And there's more than 30 acres out there. Yeah.
230.
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of land out there. So I don't think that's a problem. And then what's the other thing we need to figure out?
Probably the jail, if a jail pod, if that's gonna be part of the financing mechanism for this, because our contract with Minnehaha County is up in 2024, and I know that they are looking at reevaluating the fees that we're paying currently, and my guess is that those are not gonna go down.
Commissioner Landine, just so you know, as of today, we have 74 inmates for Lincoln County. So when we're talking about a pod, a holding cell for 5 people is much different than a jail to house our current
Right.
74 inmates that we have for Lincoln County.
I think a pod, like a regular pod, is anywhere from 80 to 100 people.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew what we were talking about as far as a holding cell versus an actual jail pod.
Commissioner Aaron's, you also need to put the public defender's office out in the building.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the one thing we're gonna have to figure out with this jail pod issue, though, is how much is it gonna cost to build that? You know, when we started out, we were just looking at building courtrooms. Now the excited exuberance from Commissioner Schmidt has led us down the path of possibly building a jail pod as well. But we're gonna need, people are gonna wanna know how much that's all gonna cost in annual lease payments every year. Now, we're gonna be able to, if we wanna be able to claw back our $2 million from Minnehaha County, we're gonna have to be able to hold as many people as what we've been putting up there. So, you know, it's easy to say the $2 million will be able to cover some construction costs or annual lease payments, but we're gonna have to know those numbers as well. And then we're gonna have to also make sure that people, the public, knows what the annual operational and maintenance costs are gonna be as well, because that's gonna have to come out of our budget as
You already
well
have
then.
that. I was just gonna say, I think that's already done because I've discussed that with a couple people.
Since I'm in an argumentative mood, Commissioner Aaron's, the thing I want to know is, are you going to take Darcy's offer or not?
I haven't seen his offer in writing, and I'd sure like to see.
Well, we heard tonight that he said he would commit from $20 to $40 million. I mean, that was for public record.
We can accept him and bind him. Let's take that offer today.
I mean, that was what Aaron told us. He would go from $20 to $40 million. Okay, so that's public record. I can, if he didn't intend to do that, he shouldn't have said anything, but he did. I'm not. Now, don't do that.
He actually said 45.
Well, let's also get a handle on what that annual payment's gonna be.
Well, I agree with you there, Commissioner Aaron's, because when I talked to him, I said one of the things that's going to be predicated on is how much, if we do all of these things, what is the lease payment going to be and what impact that has on our budget? So, I mean, that I understand. So, Commissioner Aaron's, we say what we need. You know, what is it? My dad always said, is it a want or is it a need? Well, I think it isn't a want, it is a need here. So when do we finally come up with what it is that we think we want? Okay?
I think what we need right now, today, is more courtroom space.
That
I
I
don't
agree
think
with.
right now, today, or even 18 months from now, we need a jail. Is that a secondary phase, though, that we need to start talking about now?
Yes.
Absolutely. But are we breaking ground for a jail along with new courtroom space? No.
Our first need is courtrooms, courtrooms, courtrooms. That's what we're here for, and that's what we have. But by putting the concept out there, we open the ability to
Yes.
expand for the jail. We expand for the mental health. We can take those in phases. But our
Yes.
most pressing need right now is courtroom space. So,
Didn't you make a motion at some point, Larry? Not to put you back on the spot or anything.
didn't you make a,
You did make a motion at some point.
I did.
now is your mic on?
Yeah, I got
Okay.
my mic, but
I don't want Sherry to get up
I-
here.
I think I'd like to break it down so it's simpler. And I would like this committee to go on record that we support and are directing the design of a justice center to be located west of downtown Canton. Okay, I just want to have a little room, move both sides if something happens, okay?
Now,
So, all right, and then I'm gonna tell you what my next one's gonna be. I'm gonna talk about that we would like to study the concept of the regional jail, and then the next one I'd like to vote on after that is your concept and studies, and I'm trying to give Commissioner Aaron some room for us to get together, you know, to move forward on that, and not just jump off the diving board all at one time.
so how, I mean, you gotta bring this to the commission for a vote.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is that this committee says, hello, commission, we spent a lot of time looking at this, and here's what we think we ought to do. And you tell them again who's on that. We've got a lot of experts here. We have citizens, we have the judiciary. This is what we all came up with. We had an aha moment at our last meeting, and everybody said, yes, that's a great idea. Somebody give me a second so we could vote.
I'll give you a second as long as we're doing it in phases.
Sure, oh,
Okay.
yes.
Well,
So-
we got a motion and second. Is there any discussion?
How long before this happens does the city have to actually annex that land?
What will happen is if the city acquires, or if the county acquires the land or Johnson builds it, one of the conditions you'd have in your lease is that he would petition to have that land annexed into the city, and the city would agree to do that.
He's gonna be the landowner, Betty,
Okay,
so he has to make the petition.
okay.
And I have a couple people from the commission here, and they obviously can't vote, but they would stare at me and glare at me if what I said was wrong. Okay.
All right, so you've heard the motion and second. Any other discussion on it? So as I understand it, the recommendation and the motion to the commission is, do you want to restate it, Larry?
Oh, man, I was afraid you'd do that.
Well, I think we want clarity here.
Well, okay, let's all work on the motion together. We need a motion that the committee recommends that the county build a
Justice Center.
Justice Center
Complex. Yep.
courtroom complex.
west of the city is what you said,
West of city. Yep.
west of downtown.
West of downtown, located within the city boundaries of Canton.
Something that could be acceptably annexed into the city boundary.
Just, it's gotta be annexed and then we'll have.
Why wouldn't you say Johnson's location?
I'm trying to get us to, let's endorse that concept. Then the next thing I think we need to go, okay, if he's gonna give us the land, yes, we're gonna take that land, that's a great idea. Then I think we have to look at the financing concept and, you know, we're all doing our diligence, and if the financing works out and you can cash flow it, it's gonna do it, but if it ends up you're spending every dime that you have and you can't do any other stuff, you're not gonna do
Understood.
that. It's cash flowing, and
So what you're saying is this is the first incremental step.
yeah, I'm just trying to do it in steps. I'd love to have Darcy Johnson's land, but I don't, for some reason, want to have that land pulled, and then all of a sudden we're saying, well, we said we built there. I want to be able to do it on another piece that's adjacent to the city if we have to.
Okay.
How about voting on your motion and then a motion to enter into due diligence?
Perfect, because after I get this one passed, I'm quitting. I'm gonna let you guys do the rest of it.
You've done a yeoman's work tonight.
Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, should we call the question?
We'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, it's unanimous. Larry's motion passed. To recommend to the county commission that a Justice Center complex be constructed west of downtown Canton. But I think there's some follow-on motions here.
Okay, Betty, which one you want up next?
Well, that included to be done in phases. I mean, that first motion included to be worked out in phases, not everything at the same time. And that was the courtrooms, that
Yeah.
was the regional jail, that was,
Within the motion I just made, we did not do anything on a jail and we did not do anything on a treatment center.
right, because we thought that that would be done later in phases.
It was just
Right.
courtrooms.
Just courtrooms was the first,
Courtrooms, that's
yes.
right.
That's all.
Well, I
In
think
the
we don't just
complex.
say just courtrooms, because we need clerk of courts.
Clerk of courts.
Court services.
Court
um,
services.
Sheriff's
Public
Department.
Defender's Office,
Public-
Sheriff's Department,
Okay.
State's Attorney,
Right.
Court services, yeah.
emergency.
I have a suggestion here for two motions. First, I think we need some context of what we're looking at building, so I think your concept of we need something laid out for size and anything else from our architects. The second motion should be, as we should probably recommend to the county commission, that we actually start talking to Mr. Johnson and actually roughing out. So make a recommendation to the commission to authorize me to start talking to him to see what the details are.
So moved. I'm the chair. Would somebody want to make that motion?
I so move.
There's a motion to authorize Mr. Golden to start talking to Mr. Johnson's representatives to determine, what is it, Bill?
Well, I want a recommendation from this committee. The commission directs
Right.
me to go
Right.
and talk to Mr. Johnson and see what his parameters were and some details, so I can bring it back to everybody. So we actually have something, a little more rough framework, so everybody kind of knows what we're talking about, and we have something more in writing. So what are our lease conditions? How big is the building that we're talking about? What is he talking about for financing our building? And seeing if our budget, because we're gonna have to be able to afford it. If we can come up with something where it fits within there, so I can bring back the details, so that we can go from there.
It's a due diligence
Yep,
conversation, right?
exactly.
And that also would include whether or not he's donating the land, correct?
That would all be the details that we rough out.
Okay, so the motion is to recommend to the commission, Mr. Golden enter into those conversations with Mr. Johnson about due diligence issues.
Did we get a second?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's
We
a
got a second.
second. Any discussion? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, passes. Mr. Nelson.
Clarity purposes, do we need to direct what we're talking about building? 20-year, 40-year? I mean, design me a courthouse, it's gotta kinda know the size, doesn't he?
Square footage wasn't at 40,000 square feet that we need.
Total program square footage for the courts was 32,000 net square feet. State's attorney was at 8,500. Sheriff's Department would move out there, they were at 11. So that's 51,500 net.
Okay, so that would be,
Take that times some factor, 1.3.
But you're gonna have to enter into that, Andrew, public defender's office, dispatch, and emergency services as well,
You're right.
right?
Yeah, you're cleaning out the whole basement.
Yeah.
And then times 1.3
And
to
court
start.
services, right?
And, yeah,
Court services.
Court services.
Yeah, that was all in the court.
Yeah.
But how, does that include how many court rooms? Six, okay.
And we should have 10.
Yeah, so we need to bump that.
within 20 years.
Right, and you don't have to build out all 10.
Correct.
You know, right away.
Correct.
You build 6.
You can build 6. There will
With
be,
the option
there
to
will be
build one.
4 more
Correct.
rooms that have the square footage and the ancillary services.
So you-
And then as
you build
needed,
it.
we can go,
Correct.
you
Then you
rough it
build
out,
what you
you'll
need.
finish it off. And they'll be, for example, they'll serve as multi-purpose rooms or storage until we need them.
Oh, and
Judges,
I suspect
good
that
with
I'll
that?
come back with more than one option.
And I think Andrew will have to do a look, you know, there's gonna be some more work he'll have to do because
Judge?
we just told him 10 courtrooms. He's gonna have to build onto that. 10 offices for judges.
Yes.
10 offices for
build 6.
court reporters, or, you know, all of those ancillary off things that go along with including more space. You
So
know,
I'll need
law
to talk to you
clerks,
about-
legal interns, all those things. Okay.
I wish I did too.
Andrew, how long do you think that would take you?
Again, depends on how detailed we want the plans to be, and we're just trying to get to square footages and rough budgets based on cost per square foot, site improvements. That's the quick, because that to me seems to make sense, is to use the numbers that we've already got generated, discuss those, and come up with the size first, and then the approximate budget, and start the conversations with the property owner based on those parameters. Drawing what it's going to look like in floor plan or on site plan, frankly, doesn't really matter until you know that the financial part of the deal works, so.
And we might as well, if we start on the high side, for everything we could possibly want, then we can figure out what we have to scale back to if our budget doesn't get there, but we might as well start on the high side.
So how long does it take you to do that, what you just recommended?
It's sitting down with the right group of people that can say, these assumptions are still good. Add the numbers up and we've got the total square footage. It's not gonna take time.
A week or two?
The background effort's already been done. It's just
Can you do it by the 22nd?
I have input from people on what that my assumptions are correct, and,
I'll work with you to get to who you need to get to.
yeah, I mean, we can be
Okay.
in the ballpark.
Good.
I think we need to shoot for these things to be done by the 22nd.
Amen.
Okay. Any other motions other than to adjourn? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that this committee recommends to the county commission that it study the concept of having a regional jail facility located at or near the Justice Center.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Got a motion and second to recommend to the county commission to study the concept of a jail and/or regional jail
In that vicinity, in that complex.
in that complex. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes.
I have one other motion I'd like the committee to recommend to the commission, and it would be that, and Judge Rasmussen, I'd like you to help me say what you think we need to say. For our mental health facility and our drug treatment center, I don't know that I want to make sure I'm saying the right words and it accomplishes what you think the need may be.
I wonder if we should wait on that just a
Okay.
little bit.
All right?
That might derail other
Then I will-
immediate needs.
then I
But
will-
that could be a future, we're all
Absolutely.
talking future phases.
Absolutely.
As just a feasibility in the future of having that facility. Because I think that even the state's attorney's office is really wanting that as well, a treatment center.
I would say rehabilitative and
Yes.
reintegrative services.
But that's a phase for us down the line. The courtrooms are absolutely the first and foremost.
Larry, I would say to wait. I agree with Judge Helmut. You have the triage center located in Sioux Falls. That has not received its full implementation to see how impact that has, so that I think we can bring that up at a later date.
For once, I'm gonna agree with you. Withdraw that motion.
Shock of shocks.
Is there a motion? Any other motions? Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.